Hi there. I want to tell you my story, the journey of how I mastered English. It wasn't easy, but it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. I hope my story can inspire you and show you that you, too, can master English, no matter where you start. I was born in a small village where English was not spoken at all. We had our own local language, and that's all I heard growing up. English felt like a faraway dream. I used to think that only people living in big cities or those going to fancy schools could learn English. But deep down, I always wanted to speak it. Every time I saw a movie in English or heard someone talking fluently, I felt a mix of admiration and envy. The first time I tried to learn English was in school. We had a small English class, but to be honest, I didn't pay much attention. The teacher mostly taught grammar rules, and I didn't understand why they were important. I memorized some words for exams, but forgot them the next day. I never thought I would actually use them in real life. English was just a subject for me, not a language to speak. Then, one day, something happened that changed my mindset. I remember I was watching a cricket match on TV. The commentary was in English, and even though I didn't understand all the words, it sounded so powerful and confident. I wanted to sound like that. That was the moment I decided. I need to learn English, not just for school, but for myself. I didn't know where to start, so I began with what I had, my school books. I opened the English textbook and started reading aloud. At first, it was terrible. I couldn't pronounce half the words, and I didn't understand most of the sentences. But I told myself, Andrew, you're not going to give up? I kept reading every day, even if it was just for 10 minutes. Soon, I realized that just reading wasn't enough. I needed to hear how English sounded. So I borrowed my cousin's old cassette player. He had some tapes of English songs. I didn't understand the lyrics, but I listened anyway. I kept rewinding and repeating the songs, trying to catch the words. I still remember my first English song, We Will Rock You by Queen. I didn't know what rock meant back then, but I sang along as best as I could. Listening to English music made me curious. I started paying attention to the sounds of the words and how they were pronounced. That's when I discovered something amazing. English has rhythm. It's not just about words. It's about how those words flow together. I tried to mimic the way singers pronounced each word, even if it felt silly at first. But I didn't stop there. I also wanted to speak English, not just listen to it. The problem was, I didn't have anyone to talk to. In my village, no one spoke English. I felt stuck, but then I came up with an idea. If no one was around to talk to me, I would talk to myself. Yes, I know it sounds funny, but it worked. Every morning, I would stand in front of the mirror and introduce myself in English. I would say things like, "Hello, my name is Andrew. I am from a small village. I love cricket." At first, it felt awkward, and I made a lot of mistakes. But the more I practiced, the more confident I became. One day, I found an old dictionary in my school library. It became my best friend. I carried it everywhere. Whenever I heard a new word, I looked up. I started writing down words I liked and made my own little vocabulary notebook. I would use those words in sentences and try to remember them. But learning words wasn't enough. I needed to put them into context. So, I started reading storybooks. I remember my first English storybook. It was a simple book about a boy and his dog. The sentences were short and easy to understand. I read that book so many times, I practically memorized it. Storybooks helped me learn how words are used in real-life situations. Then came another big challenge, listening to native speakers. I didn't have access to the internet back then, so I relied on TV. I started watching English news channels. At first, it was overwhelming. They spoke so fast, and I couldn't understand much. But I kept watching. Slowly, I began to pick up phrases and expressions. I noticed how they used words like however, actually, and basically. I started using those words in my own sentences. One thing that really helped me was writing in English. I started keeping a journal. Every night before bed, I would write a few sentences about my day. It was hard in the beginning. I made so many grammar mistakes, but I didn't let that stop me. Writing helped me organize my thoughts and improve my grammar over time. Another turning point came when I got access to a computer. I discovered English learning videos and online courses. The internet opened a whole new world for me. I could listen to podcasts, watch tutorials, and even join online forums where people practiced English together. It was amazing to connect with people from different countries, all trying to learn the same language. I remember one particular experience that boosted my confidence. I joined an online chat room for English learners. I introduced myself, and even though I made mistakes, the other members were so supportive. They corrected me kindly and encouraged me to keep going. That's when I realized making mistakes is okay. It's part of the learning process. By now, English was becoming a part of my daily life. I started thinking in English, even when I wasn't speaking it. For example, when I looked at an apple, I didn't just think apple in my native language. I thought, this is an apple. It is red. I can eat it. Thinking in English helped me become more fluent over time. I also set small goals for myself. 1 week, my goal was to learn 10 new words. Another week, I focused on improving my pronunciation. Every time I achieved a goal, no matter how small, I felt motivated to keep going. As time went on, I realized that mastering English wasn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It was about confidence. I had to believe in myself and not be afraid of making mistakes. And then, something incredible happened, an opportunity to speak English in real life. One day, a group of foreign tourists visited my village. They were exploring the countryside and needed directions. A few people in the village tried to help, but no one could understand what the tourists were saying. That's when I stepped forward. My heart was racing, and I could feel my palms sweating. I kept thinking, what if I mess up? What if they don't understand me? But then I remembered everything I had practiced, talking to myself in the mirror, writing in my journal, and watching all those English videos. I told myself, Andrew, you've got this. So, I took a deep breath and said, hello, can I help you? To my surprise, they smiled and said, yes, we are looking for the nearest bus stop. I paused for a moment to process their words, then replied, the bus stop is 5 minutes from here. Go straight, and you will see it on the left. They thanked me, and I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I had spoken English with real people, and they understood me. That moment gave me so much confidence. It made me realize that all the small steps I had taken were worth it. After that, I started looking for more opportunities to practice. I volunteered at a nearby community center where tourists often came to learn about our culture. My job was to explain things in English. At first, it was challenging, but with each conversation, I became more fluent and natural. One thing I learned during this time was the importance of listening carefully. When someone spoke to me in English, I focused on their tone, expressions, and the way they formed sentences. This helped me understand not just the words, but the meaning behind them. As I practiced more, I also started noticing the little details of the language. For example, how native speakers use contractions like I'm instead of I am, or how they say things like, "What's up?" instead of "How are you?" I tried to mimic these phrases to sound more fluent. There was one funny moment I'll never forget. I was trying to explain something to a tourist, and instead of saying, "I love your shoes," I accidentally said, "I love your shows." They laughed, and so did I. It was a mistake, but it didn't matter because I was learning. That's when I realized mistakes are not failures, they are stepping stones. As my confidence grew, I decided to challenge myself further. I started participating in English-speaking competitions. The first competition was nerve-wracking. I had to give a speech in front of a big audience. My hands were shaking, and my voice was trembling, but I kept going. When I finished, the audience clapped, and it felt like I had conquered the world. I didn't win that competition, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had stepped out of my comfort zone. From then on, I kept pushing myself. I joined debates, attended workshops, and even started teaching basic English to kids in my village. Teaching others helped me learn even more because it forced me to explain things clearly. Another turning point came when I started watching English movies with subtitles. This was a game changer. It helped me connect spoken words with their written forms. I learned new phrases, expressions, and even slang. One of my favorite movies was The Pursuit of Happiness. The story was inspiring, and it taught me words like determination and opportunity. I also started reading newspapers in English. At first, it was hard to understand the articles, but I kept a dictionary by my side. Whenever I came across a difficult word, I looked it up. Slowly, my vocabulary expanded, and I began to understand even complex sentences. One of the most rewarding moments came when I was able to help someone else. A friend of mine wanted to apply for a job, but was nervous about the English interview. I helped him practice by pretending to be the interviewer. We practiced questions like, "Tell me about yourself," and "Why do you want this job?" He got the job, and he told me it was because of my help. That made me feel so proud. As time went on, English became a part of my identity. I started thinking, dreaming, and even joking in English. It no longer felt like a foreign language. It felt like a tool that connected me to the world. I could now read books, watch shows, and talk to people from different countries with ease. Looking back, I realized that mastering English wasn't about being perfect. It was about being consistent, curious, and open to learning. Every small effort I made, whether it was listening to songs, talking to myself, or reading a book, added up over time. And now, here I am, sharing my story with you. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that anyone can learn English. You don't need to live in an English-speaking country or go to an expensive school. All you need is the right mindset and the determination to keep going, even when it feels hard. So, that's my journey. But your journey starts now. If I can do it, so can you.